it's interesting when he's describing the democracy, he says how creative and free it seems and open-ended and anyone can do. His description of the democratic man always is great, where he says one day he drinks himself under the table, the next he's on a strict diet of water. He usually talks politics, and when he does, he says the first thing that comes to his mind he'll take to philosophy and learning and then give it up the next day. And it's
Right.
just, it's a free and carefree life that you can do whatever you want. But you can see how you've taken off the discipline for wealth, the we're going to acquire just for the, I'm going to do whatever now. I'm going to see where it goes. And my life will be free and happy and blessed. He also says that it's very open. So you'll have a lot of foreigners and other people come and visit and think, wow, look at this very free society. But we have all the preconditions in which you end up with tyranny there in democracy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think he's being funny.
He's being funny, yeah.
I think he's being funny because all that freedom operates at the basest level of human potentiality. Like the point is anything great takes time and effort and work. Mm-hmm. And so when you're describing that, you're saying the democratic man can achieve none of those things. He cannot achieve any of the excellences that he sometimes likes and then other times doesn't. Do you see what like?
Oh yeah, there's no pursuit of a greatness.
There's no. It's actually a reduction to the basest level of human beings, which is just our arbitrary and whimsical desires, right? And so you're not achieving any levels of greatness, but that. The flattening of society under the democracy, I think, is really important, right? Because the democracy has to maintain the most extreme of all fictions, which is that everyone's the same, which is ridiculous, right? And it's ridiculous from the very beginnings of the discussion of the Republic that no, there are differences in humanity, and the whole political problem is how is it that different people with different abilities, and not just different, but like different levels of superiority, right? I mean, like different in the sense that some are smarter than others, faster than others, funnier than others, whatever, more charismatic, totally. More attractive, right? Like you have actual hierarchies of excellence, and how in differences, and how is it that those things need to be incorporated together into unity when the democracy denies all that difference and attempts to flatten society. The only way to do it is through overwhelming law, right? Like the law has to become seamless and universal, right? Which is what's being described. I mean, the law of the city is now total.
Oh, okay. So it has to be omnipresent to flatten the social order so that everyone ends up having the appearance of being equal, of being everyone's on the same field.
The political world becomes a complete fiction, right? And this is the reason why it's the place where you can go constitution hunting, because if you're building a society that's a political realm that's entirely fictitious, you can build anything you want, right? Like it's no longer tied to
the reality
of difference. Do you see? So now you're free to build whatever you want, right? And so all the different like constitutions of modernity are all based upon the democratic fiction that society is made up of interchangeable parts, and therefore are capable of being ordered extrinsically, right, by constitutions.
And importantly here, it has to be ordered by some centralized state structure that holds the equality flattening together. Isn't that the point too, right? Like
absolutely, right.
It's not. It isn't just hippie, do whatever you want, democratic. No. That only occurs because there's a state that has an overwhelming law that equalizes the whole and subjectifies it along a strain, right?
You can't do whatever you want. What if you want to be excellent?
Oh yeah, exactly. If you want to be excellent,
you get persecuted. The law shuts you down and goes after you. You can't. The universality of it is the universality of the bottom, right? And this is where the idea of a sort of totalitarian democracy as a primitive form is true, right? And it doesn't have to be that there's a overwhelming, like what is the strength of democracy? The strength of democracy is the resentment, and this is what Nietzschean is correct, and actually in the Republic and in Callicles says a similar thing, right? That the resentment of greatness, of power, of excellence becomes the basis of the order that the democratic regime institutes, right? So the democratic regime is like that kind of like social contract where they bind together is against those who would reinstitute hierarchy. Do you see? Okay.
Yeah.
And now that law has to be the most impressive law, the most mandating of conformity, the most, even though, so it's like, oh, they can do all this kinds of stuff, but no, not really. It's all variations within a bottom, a sort of empty bottom, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, you can be a philosopher as long as you're never really one. That the prerequisite, like we were saying from the beginning, every form of power has a prerequisite ordering of the soul in order for that power to exist. And the democratic power, the power of the democratic regime, is premised upon the destruction of all other nodes of hierarchy. Mm-hmm. All right, so family, and what does he say? I mean, there's long discussions of what happens to the family, right? It ultimately leading to the tyrannical, where the destruction of the family and the preying upon the family is integral to the understanding of how we move into the most tyrannical of regimes, right? Because the family, like we talked about in an earlier podcast, the family is where difference, hierarchy, authority, common good is the most obvious and most natural to us. So it's the place in which we can get the intellectual and social resources with which to understand what a just society would look like. So if you're going to attack all difference, all hierarchy, then the family has to become undone, and that's the final move of the democratic, right? Is for the people to turn against the family and the killing of the father, right?
Yeah.